Welcome to the BFF Report. I'm your host, Mike B.A.K. Phony, and today we're going to be talking about rifts. Dungeons. Specifically dungeons. Last time we talked about PvP. Time before that we were talking about, like, the other basic stuff, character creation and all that stuff. Yeah, okay. So, this week, dungeons. There's 3 of them to talk about. We may have 4, but to be honest with you, we're probably only going to see 3. I don't even think there's even a 4th one out right now. So, this group you're about to see is composed of Lore, Jasmine, and myself. If you don't know Lore, he's the guy with the hair. If you don't know Jasmine, she's the one with the hair and the glasses. If you don't know me, I'm awesome. Balls are on point. The first dungeon we're going to talk about today is Realm of the Fae, and this one is located in the Guardian-dominated zone of Silverwood, which made the trip here as a level 20-something Defiant pretty interesting. It's the first dungeon available in that area and is focused for the 16 to 19 crowd. The theme here is supposed to be the 4 seasons, and if you live in Las Vegas or anywhere in Arizona, you probably don't know what the f*** I'm talking about, but trust me, there really are 4 of them. The boss/loot system is pretty standard, and by standard I mean it's just like WoW, oh my god, in that every boss drops a rare item and unlocks the next area. Speaking of, first boss up in the, I'm guessing, spring area is Trickster Malo, and he has 2 guardians that you should kill first, unless your balls are on point like us and you just swing wildly in any direction and still get the kill. But if not, one of them gives him a buff to his damage output, while the other one reduces his damage taken by 90%. So, if you were hitting this guy like a 12-year-old girl with the flu and couldn't figure out why, there you go. He has 2 CC abilities, a stun and a polymorph, or as Riff likes to call it, transmogrify, which doesn't quite roll off the tongue right. And people are like, oh, I'm polying dude. It's like, you're not gonna be like, oh, I'm transmogrifying dude. Really? It doesn't really, whatever. The next boss up is Legatum, and he is a frog toady type thing or something, and this fight is just stupid easy. You cannot, please tell me you've never wiped on this dude. All you have to do is just don't stand in the stuff that kills you. That's his only ability. He just drops down slime on some random target. Don't stand in it, you win. Third boss up and the leader of the Autumn area is Battlemaster Atrophinius, and he seems rather confused as to why you guys are here.
We have guests, lads. Come, wanderers, and join us for some mead. What? Desecrate my mead garden?
This guy has 2 abilities you should be aware of. The first is a frontal cleave attack, so simply have your tank point the boss away from the party and you'll be good to go. And the second is well suited for the Rifttoberfest setting and is called Drunken Rage, where he bro rushes a random target in your party. Moving on to the winter phase, I wanted to show you all how crazy well done this snowblind effect is. I gotta give props to Triumph for not making weather a gimmick in Rift and making trees bleed profusely. Jesus Christ, blood everywhere. Once you get to the summit, you are greeted with a handful of mini-bosses who are all relatively simple to just burn through before finally getting to take on the Fey Lord Twill. Twill has only one direct ability where he freezes a random player. The other ability is rather indirect and is a small green effect that moves randomly on the ground. In most games, green represents AoE nature heals, so be sure to coach the casuals before starting this fight, otherwise they will inadvertently make this fight a little bit more interesting. Next up, we have Iron Tombs, which, like Realm of the Fae, is the first dungeon reasonably accessible to Defiant players, roughly between the levels of 15 and 20. The theme here, if I may, is pretty much Return to Castle Wolfenstein, the Temple of Doom Raider, The Mummy Returns, if that makes any sense. The first boss up is Mr. Ash Stone, who is a relatively simple boss, assuming, of course, you don't let his debuff stack enough times to one-shot your party. Outside of being pretty healing intensive, you shouldn't really have any issues with this guy. Next fight up is the 3 Kings, and you face each one of them individually before having to handle all 3 at once. And in a world where Rift Head style sites didn't exist, what is supposed to be happening here is you and your party are learning what each boss does, and then applying that knowledge in the final encounter. In this case, Lyric the Ascendant has a healing ability, which means he's obviously the first one to die. Follow that up with Darabic so he doesn't nuke anyone in your party, and then deal with Humbart the Bold, who relies on a frontal cleave and is easily managed. Once all the bosses are down, a chest spawns in the middle of the floor, and that is where your loot is. A couple things before moving on to the next encounter. There are a few side quests that you can do here, one being a Ghostbuster-style holding and trapping of spectral phantasms, and the other, and this one is important, is the destruction of these stones. Now, pay attention. The more damage you do to the stone, the more mobs appear. If you have a pet that is on auto attack, or if you just feel like accidentally griefing your party, this will happen to you. This next part is pretty sweet. You have to move through this lower chamber filled with tons of mobs, and since you were obviously not going to tank your way through it, they have these orbs that periodically activate, killing all the mobs in the vicinity. There will be times when an orb shuts down before you move on to the next, so timing your group's movement here is absolutely critical. The final boss in Iron Tombs is Ragnoth the Despoiler, and this guy has 3 abilities. Gout of Flame, which is a single target damage spell, Chaotic Flame, which is essentially a cleave, and the last spell, which will almost guarantee a wipe, is called Flame of Ragnoth.
Come near, hero. I can protect you from the Despoiler's foul magic.
Oh, but yeah, then there's that ghost dude who protects you from it, so if you wipe to that, you better just reroll life. Finally, we have Deep Strike Mines, which is tuned for the mid-20s crowd. And since I'm already on a roll here, I'll just go ahead and say that this looks a lot like the big orgy rave scene from The Matrix.
He's having a huge orgy at his place later tonight. At least that's what many of us have heard.
It is true. What many of you have heard.
First up is Overseer Marcus, who, besides aggroing all the ads in the platform and cleaving his face off, does little else. Oh, except for the part where he vanishes at 50%, spawning 3 ads in his place, and when he comes back, he is pissed and just beats the donkadoo balls out of the tank. At this point, it just becomes a race between your healer's mana pool and the DPS's damage output, so if you have CDs, this would be a good time to blow them. Next up is Gregory Kreslov, and he has 2 simple phases. Phase 1 is tank and spank, and wrangle up this single ad that spawns randomly. And on phase 2, he turns immune and summons 3 channelers who need to be killed before he switches back to phase 1. And for the duration of the fight, he actually doesn't move at all, so this encounter is like stupid easy. Following that is the 3rd boss in the mines, and Big Sexy here is named Bonehue the Thunderer. Ooh, look at you. Fancy. Big Bones here is a relatively simple fight. He has one move that you should try to avoid, which, as you can see, we weren't trying to avoid so, you know, it's not really a big deal, I guess. He basically runs to one side of the platform and casts a frontal cone knockback, and if you're standing in the wrong spot, he will hunt you off the platform. It's really, really hard for that to happen, though, as we got knocked back at least 50 times this fight, and nobody was launched, so try really hard not to be that guy. So far, the fights have been relatively straightforward. And then there's this guy. Gatekeeper Kaleida is, as you would expect, the hardest boss in the instance. But he is the hardest by a ridiculous margin. Keep in mind, these instances were brand new when we ran them, and for the most part, we're kind of figuring them out as we go along. Anyways, this boss has 2 auras, or stances. One is Earth, and the other is Fire. When he's under the Earth effect, he does some AoE cleave damage, but then he throws out this orb that follows a random player, so don't try to outrun it, and spawns a healing stone that will proceed to heal Kaleida until it is destroyed. Obviously, this means that everybody should switch to these stones because it will undo all the damage you have done to him during the phase within a handful of seconds. The fire phase does relatively the same thing. Lots of damage, throws an orb, except the stone that spawns needs to be avoided because it will explode, and exploding firestones are bad. Unfortunately, our DPS or our coordination, one of the two, was so bad that I had to literally jump out of the fight to res Sunday, my pet, this is awesome, to help DPS the healing stones. That was actually making a difference during this fight, was actually having Sunday out there DPSing down the stones. Good job, Sunday. So there goes another episode of Rift stuff. Again, what do you guys think, man? Like, have you guys pre-ordered yet? Like, what are you guys doing, man? The release date's coming, like, freaking soon. So are you guys pre-ordering? Are you guys gonna play Rift your face off? Are you guys gonna be part of the advance thing? I mean, like, you know, what's going on? Let me know in the comments below. Hit me up at Twitter or whatever. Blah, blah, blah. Why am I talking in this voice? I don't know. But I'll see you guys next week. Peace.